Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Amplify Your Business. Today, we're going to be talking to Dan Flatt. He is the founder and chief neighbor over at Naborino. Welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning, Lance. Thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah, so talk to me a little bit about Naborino and what you're creating over there with this really intriguing app or platform. I'm not too sure what the best term is to use for this, but love the story. So why don't you tell us a little bit of the backstory as to what you're doing there and how you got her started?
Sure, sounds good. So at Naborino, we are connecting local communities of neighbors and unlocking the many benefits of local community that are often inaccessible to people who live in big urban cities. And chief among those benefits is the ability to combine, your buying power and buy as a group in our group buying marketplace. So we're structuring our user experience as a hybrid between a hyperlocal social network that really, right now we're focusing on apartment and condo buildings. So really just being the place where you connect with the neighbors in your building. And as neighbors start coming together, we also bring them really unique offers in our marketplace from a variety of vendors selling different products and services, where if neighbors buy together, they save a lot of money and there's a lot of benefits to the vendors as well.
Yeah, so it's really about empowering people to unleash a group buying power, essentially, that they would have together that they don't have as individuals. And at the same time, by bringing all those neighbors together, you're building community then that's a lot tighter and obviously a lot more interactive anyway, because they're now conversing, they're now working kind of together to identify those opportunities that they might want to get involved with from a buyer's perspective. Is that right? You know, me growing up in a northern Alberta community, a very small community, and so you knew everybody for miles and miles because you kind of relied on each other for different things. And so it was a pretty remote, place to grow up in, and it just forced that cooperation, collaboration, and that was actually one of the things moving to the city. That was one of the biggest kind of discomforts that I had, is just this. Nobody popped in on anybody in the city. It was whether you were in an apartment building, you went over to knock on somebody's door, or whether you were, in the area, another neighborhood where you know that you have a friend, and just pop by and say hi and maybe have a cup of coffee or something. That was completely unacceptable. But where I grew up, that happened all the time, where people would just kind of pop in. And so I love the idea of just getting people to interact, to bump into each other. And in this case, they're going to be doing it virtually, I suppose, in a lot of cases, but then there's a chance that they're going to be physically bumping into each other as they're breaking apart the larger group orders that are coming in. And so using commerce as an incentive to create that, I just think that's beautiful.
Yeah, I think so much of what you just said about the experience of growing up in a smaller town, that I've heard that story so many times when I've shared this idea with people. And I think not just small towns, but also people moving here, moving to Toronto. Toronto's an immigrant city, coming from different places. It's so difficult to get to know people, and and particularly during the pandemic, when all of a sudden, everybody was just confined to their units for, the first few months. And that really is kind of the origin story of Naborino for me is.
Yeah. And I really like that aspect of the group buying and having it all delivered to one place, because one of the things that we keep hearing from a lot of our consumer packaged goods clients is that they're just having, with all of the shipping cost increases, a real difficult time, especially if they have any density to their product, a real difficult time actually getting the shipping costs down low enough to make any level of a purchase actually reasonable or affordable for an individual household or individual buyer. And so the ability to group that all together and make essentially wholesale accounts out of each of these buildings that have the density for that order volume. That's absolutely brilliant, because it also gives them the ability to compete against, or give them compete like, I guess, similarly to Amazon in that regard too. And I'd imagine, just again, the logistics is just going to be quicker shipping and so on. So there's a lot of great things that can come out of this for those smaller consumer packaged good companies who are just really struggling with distribution across the country. So I really think that this is just a winner in that regard, and then a winner in terms of that community aspect, which is just, the collision of the two is great. Now, one of the things, though, that we've bumped up against, or a lot of our guests have, who are trying to build both sides of a marketplace or both sides of the market at the same time, is just it's really difficult to get, you can't attract the buyers unless you have the product. You can't attract the product or the suppliers unless you've got the buyers there, right? And so tell me, you're 2 years into it, I think you said. So tell me, how have you tackled that challenge in growing both sides at the same time?
Yeah, well, I think I was about 1 year into it before I discovered that there was so much literature out there on the best practices of actually building marketplaces. And so I've got some, really discovered some great reading. The VC firm NFX, like they publish some amazing thought leadership about what the aspects of a two-sided marketplace, a three-sided marketplace, and all the kind of giving a bit of a checklist of all the things you need to consider as you're building a marketplace. But really, the chicken and the egg problem,
Yeah.
got a two-sided marketplace, is always chief among the challenges. And so in our case, the two sides of our marketplace, on the supply side, we have vendors who could be products, could be services, but essentially they are creating a group buy offer where they can set the original price of the product, the minimum number of people, or the group size, or number of units that need to be sold in one order in order to unlock a discount or some kind of value add perk that people wouldn't be able to get if they ordered by themselves.
Yeah, so very, very similar to the Groupon model of, I don't know if they're even doing much anymore. But that was a craze there about a decade or so ago, in which there was just a lot of those kinds of companies, apps that were out there unlocking the deals, right? So very similar to that.
So I will, Groupon always comes up, and I will always kind of just say that Groupon, in their very early days, I think this is like Web 1.0, and dating myself a little bit here, but in the early days, you would receive like forwarded emails from your friends, your aunt, saying, hey, if 50 people join this deal, then we'll all get a discount, and if we don't reach that. And so there was this social pressure, and I'm not sure what happened with Groupon, but they abandoned that, and it became sort of just this daily deal site. But they were still taking those big margins from the vendors on their site, to the point where a lot of the people who would get a lot of business from it, but it wasn't repeat business. They weren't high quality customers who would come back to them afterwards. And so the value to the vendors was not there. And so, I will, when it helps people to understand the model, I'll allow the comparison to Groupon. But really, that the Chinese company Pinduoduo, like they took what Groupon had been doing, and they knocked it out of the park with just amazing execution and gamification and a whole bunch of other things. So on the other side of the marketplace, on the demand side, we have individual users and consumers, but those individual users and consumers are grouped into these local communities. And right now, those local communities, we're defining them as people who live essentially at the same building address, whether it's an apartment or condo or a complex of apartments and condos in some cases. Over time, we're hoping as we find the product market fit in those types of communities to expand to other types of local communities where the dynamics and the economics of shipping to a single location would still work. So that could still work with houses on the same street or members of the same church or synagogue, parents whose kids go to the same school. And so yeah, so your question was about the chicken and the egg problem of like how do you build two sides of the marketplace at the same time.
Yeah.
And as a pre-investment company, so far I've been bootstrapping and just self-funding with a lot of hacks and grants that have allowed us to get the traction that we have so far. But the answer has just been to be very local and very slow to go deep on one building. So I started with my own building. Before we even started building the app, I created an MVP that I built on Shopify, just with a bunch of plugins from the Shopify marketplace and some custom code that allowed us to bring that group buying functionality where we could show this is the number of people who need to join the deal. This is the discount that will unlock. And I started by just doing weekly Costco runs. And there was this insight that, I'd always felt as a person who lived in a condo and had a Costco membership that sometimes just the bulk size packages, it was too much. I didn't have enough storage space for it. So, and other people, like asked other people in the building before I started doing it, and like they felt the same way. Even the people who had memberships, but I think a lot of people decide not to get memberships because of that factor. So I called it Costco prices, condo sizes, and I would, for example, take a roll of 48 rolls of toilet paper, and then put it up on the site and say, this could be split 4 ways. Each person will get 12 rolls. And then I was sitting on the floor of my living room, splitting up the orders, kind of repackaging them into into bags, and then dropping them off at my neighbor's front door. And so really that was kind of a tryout for what is going to become the community lead or deal lead roles that we're going to be creating within our community, where we will be giving additional incentives to people who lead a deal and accept that combined delivery, but we'll make it a little bit easier than them so they don't have to sit on their living room floor repackaging things.
Yeah. I love the approach where you took with that minimal viable product and just really tested the model, learn a few things from that with all the hacks that you were doing on the Shopify platform and whatnot. So I think that's really a great origin story in terms of, okay, working through some of the mechanics of it. Now that obviously has informed the app development. Do you have an app now that is ready to be used by people on both sides, the buyers and the sellers?
So the app is ready. It hasn't. We haven't launched it yet. So we've been using this MVP, that was built on Shopify for the last year or so. Back in around August of last year, we started development, and I love to promote our partners in this because it really, I think, is one of the best kept secrets and shouldn't be in the Canadian tech ecosystem. So we partnered with a group at Centennial College, basically Centennial College's applied research faculty, and it is the acronym is called WIMTAC, which stands for Wearable Interactive Mobile Technology something. I'll I can send that over. We can put it in the show notes. But essentially, there's a lot of programs in Canada that allow companies at an early stage, at a later stage, to partner with academic institutions and receive grant support for the project that they define together. And as I was looking at the different kinds of options for how we could build the app, I started looking into these programs, and I was just lucky to meet at the Collision conference last year one of the program directors for this program. And when I started comparing it against, other universities where they may be more well known for the graduates that they graduate in, in computer engineering and software development, like Waterloo. When I looked at some of these other universities, the onboarding process was so much more complicated. If I'd gone to a university like Waterloo, I found out that I would have to identify the professor I wanted to work with myself, reach out to them, and then put together a project proposal. At Centennial, they took care of all of that for us. So started with a very simple application, and then as we developed that proposal together, they found the faculty advisor. The faculty advisor went to her classes and identified our team of 4 developers, 2 on the front end, 2 on the back end, who were going to be the best fit for the project. And then on top of everything else, the grant support that we received covered about 75% of the project. And that was already at a pretty good cost per developer hour. So when I compare the cost of development against a lot of the, even options like outsourcing to countries with a much lower labor cost, it's still it's still a better value. And the quality of the app development, our team is really, really talented. A lot of the students in the program had prior experience, in their countries of origin before they came here for the program. And so we've been able to create a very complex app. On the back end, we've got, a social network. We've developed our own e-commerce, like very unique e-commerce ecosystem, and a few other features that, I'm not at liberty to talk about just yet. And yeah, so long story short, you asked if the app is ready. The app is ready. It's looking great, but as a solo founder right now, I still haven't raised money. I am in the process of interviewing a head of marketplace, COO, somebody to join me and actually run this marketplace because I think that based on my experience running these different experiments during the MVP, if I were to turn it on right now, it would take up all of my time. I would be, managing customer service and vendor questions, and I wouldn't have a chance to do anything else. And so right now, yeah, as I said, we have an open role. If you check my LinkedIn, it's posted near the top, looking for amazing people who have see the value of the vision, see the potential, and want to get in on the ground floor, and ideally have some experience being like a city manager or a country manager for a marketplace business where they understand those dynamics. And yeah, so please.
Yeah, so I was just going to ask though. So you're basically ready to go to market. You need some more people on the team. What's the strategy once you have those people to be building both sides of that marketplace simultaneously? How are you going to tackle that?
So I have already, just on my own, I've generated demand on both sides of the marketplace. I've got a list of about 50 people in different condo buildings. Some of them are presidents of their condo board. Some of them are just people who see the value of community and are excited about this being active in their building. And the theory on the demand side with our local communities is that in every building, I think that there's probably about 1 to 5% of people who are really would be really excited about the prospect of building more community with their neighbors, and would actually put some effort into that. And I think that in a lot of cases, those people may be older, retired, have a little bit more time on their hands, and these are the kinds of people who, in some contexts, people would kind of say like they're the nosy neighbor who wants to know everybody's business, but it really comes from this desire for connection and and maybe a memory of a time when they remember knowing all their neighbors and having belonged to these local communities. And in a lot of cases, it's people from younger generations who also feel like there's something missing that we could be taking advantage of. Then on the other side of that spectrum, there's probably about, I'm hoping it's less than 10% of just people who are very private. They have no interest in getting to know the neighbors in their building. Leave me alone. I'm not interested in this. But then I think in the middle, there's probably a lot of people who, if there was utility, if it was a good user experience, if they could, just save some money on some of their regular purchases, whatever that value is that they value, they would check into the app from time to time and benefit from the effort that is being put in by the people who we identify as community leaders. So our go-to-market on that side is really find those building leaders, the people who want to be community leaders, the champions, and then put give them every tool, every a package of posters they can put up, and things that they can hand out, whatever's allowed in their building, because we also want to stay on the right side of building management and not get in trouble that way. And really just let them become the advocates to grow the community. On the demand side, I have a list of about probably 50 companies at this point who I've spoken to. I've explained the benefits, and they see it as a fit for their business. They're excited, and I have people who I've spoke to 6 months ago who are reaching out to me saying like, "Hey Dan, like, has Naborino launched yet? Like, like we want to get a deal up." And so I think like that's kind of the foundation that I've built for the two sides. That as I hire a sales team and marketplace development team who can focus maybe at first on both sides, but then get more specialized into demand side and supply side growth. I think we've got a good foundation, and we'll really focus on one neighborhood at a time. So I'm planning on, after my building, expanding out to there's about 20 other apartment buildings within a 5-minute drive of each other, and to expand out there and really focus on the vendor side, on local businesses who are in that neighborhood, both from a practical perspective that those businesses, it's going to be easier for them to deliver at a very local level, as well as there really isn't right now in the market a great digital local marketing solution that could replace the flyers that you get in your mailbox. And I say that just because I've got a marketing background. I know that there are a lot of things that are possible with Google My Business and Facebook. You can get very geo-targeted with your ads, but the fact that people are still local businesses are still spending money on putting those flyers or junk mail into people's mailboxes shows they must be still getting a return from it. And I see Naborino's local business group buy offers as the evolution to replace the the junk mail that in your average apartment building you will see, like a recycling bin full of all of these these flyers that people are just tossing right out into the garbage. Like it gets maybe less than a second of attention as you take it from your mailbox and put it into the recycling bin there.
Yeah, yeah, it's actually it's absolutely fascinating because I think that when it comes to access, like my background and our business is marketing, and so yeah, to be able to have a marketplace that a person can really get some traction with for a lot of the consumer packaged goods, but like you mentioned, services as well. I imagine there's just a lot of opportunity there. But to be able to get in front of that audience that is at that local level in a digital way, yeah, like there are few tools out there beyond some of the more common ad platforms like Facebook and so on that are there, which come with advantages, but definitely come with some certain disadvantages too. So I think having another method for companies like ours to help our local companies, I think it's just really great to have something homegrown like this. So Dan, if people who are listening right now wanted to either chat with you about being a seller on the selling side, or they have a building that they would love to be able to get this in as far as the buying side, how do they reach out to you? What's the best means there to learn more?
Yeah, I would say that our website is probably the best place to go. So it's
Okay.
Naborino, Naborino.com. We have an early access form that is geared towards the people who want to start a community in their own building and be on the list for when Naborino becomes available in their neighborhood. And then
Yeah.
we have another form that is for vendors who want to create an offer.
Yeah, sounds great, Dan. I love the name, love the concept. And one of the things that I've always said is that small businesses, successful small businesses, when you have that happening at the local level, you have then successful, thriving communities, because the business community really is the support, the infrastructure, the backbone to most communities. And so healthy businesses, healthy communities, when we can mash them all together, like what you're trying to create with this intersection of Naborino, it's just fantastic. So I wish you all the success to that. And for those who are watching the show and listening to it on a podcast, if you're interested in our archives, head over to amplifyyourbusiness.ca, and that's where you'll find all those. And if you happen to be a small business owner or entrepreneur who has an interesting story that you'd like to share as well, there's an application form there too. And if you are enjoying podcasts, prefer to just listen to it, we're available now on all of your favorite podcasting platforms out there. So just search for Amplify Your Business and you'll find us. So thank you once again, Dan. Really appreciate you taking the time today to explain to us your journey, the story behind Naborino, and just wish you all the success going forward here. I think you've got a winner.
Thanks a lot, Lance.
Okay, everybody, have a prosperous day.